use one of my dance moves just to come back to the room after. Every time I sing that song, there's something that just rushes right through me. And so just to, if you will, just take a breath with me. Whew. Well, this is, I have to just first acknowledge Unity Church of the Hills and just be so grateful for giving me another opportunity to be with you all and to have an extended time. My visit this time was extended with the Men's Renewal Retreat. And my brothers here all came out this morning. I'm just so grateful and thankful. Still flying, still up there, and it was a great, great weekend. I mean, beyond words, beyond anything that can be expressed. I mean, we came to be renewed and regenerated and rejuvenated. But we also came to release those things that we know that are no longer serving us. And I can say for myself that it was a great weekend for me. And you know, every time I have an opportunity to stand up and be with anybody, but especially with the men, I always have to tell my story about growing up in the South. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm the youngest. My sister's 11 years older than me. My brother's almost 15 years older than I am, and I am the baby. There are perks that come with being the baby. I used all those perks growing up. My grandmother was born in 1901, so she had some years on her by the time I came along. She used to keep me. At the age of 3 and 4, I would sit right beside Granny, and she would say, well, we're just going to learn some hymns and spirituals today. Nobody wanted to learn hymns and spirituals at the age of 3 and 4 years old. I know I didn't. I wanted to go outside and play, but she insisted. And so I'd sit down and she'd pretend like she was playing these chords and these notes on her knees, and I'd acquiesce. And so life continued to unfold. And like I said, the perks kept coming. I got mostly everything that I wanted. Now, this was, you know, also with the understanding that you do what we say. We call it having a hand on your life, where they pretty much tell you what you're going to be when you grow up. And my mother had me all planned for corporate America. My grandmother told me, she said, no, he's going to be a preacher. All right, Granny. Well, I wanted to play professional football, and I know you look at me now and you see me up on this stage and say, well, I know my eyes can't deceive me, but he looks little bitty, and so and the professional football might not have been the best choice for him, but I was really fast. One of the things that we had to do is we had to settle into this code of excellence. You know, whatever you did, you had to be your best, do your best. And of course, the community that I grew up in was founded in 1868 by a missionary, so all of those things with sustainable environment. We were taught, didn't really understand it at that age, but we were taught growing up. So here I am, I'm on my path, and I'm here trying to do the best that I can and trying to get everything that I can too. So straight A student, I jump into sports and become this high school All-American football player, go to college on a football scholarship, and right after college I jumped right into my mother's dream. It wasn't mine, and that was IBM. And you know, I heard so many things when I was growing up. Oh, you're just wonderful, and you're going to be great, and you can do great. And I took all of that in, but there was one voice that I was waiting to hear from. One person that I was wanting to champion all of that, and that was my father. My father was old school, born in 1925, disciplinarian. Order was always the order of the day. But also, along with that, was somewhat of an emotional detachment. My father never said he loved anybody. My father didn't like to touch people. no hugging. And so when I came out, I was the exact opposite. I landed on the planet. Hey, everybody, how you doing? My name's Charles. Give me a hug. And I tell you, at the age of 3 and 4, there was no other person that I wanted to be like other than my daddy. I wanted to walk like him, talk like him. My father had a way of pulling his sleeves up and resting them on the table before he ate. And I did the same thing, trying to get my little elbows up there. And everything my father did, I wanted to be just like. And so life rolls on, and of course, hugging him was not an option after a while. But I still tried. Told my daddy, I love you, Daddy, but never got a response. And so over time, this began to rust. And I guess it was about the age of 8 that I finally came to a conclusion. Since my father was the authoritative figure in my life, since I thought that he knew everything about me and everything else, he must be right. And there has to be something wrong with me. And so I started cultivating this life of trying to fix it. What can I do, or what can I become that would warrant him saying, I love you? I'm proud of you, son. This is my boy. And I did everything that I possibly could. And it never happened. So it comes a time that I'm getting ready to leave the house and I'm going to college. Finish college and I get this really good job with IBM, and I thought, this will do it. This will do the trick. So I go home and I tell my dad, I said, Daddy, guess what? Real man now, responsibility. I've stepped into the life of responsibility. I got a job with IBM. And he looks at me and he says, mm-hmm. And you know, in that pause, you're waiting for something else. Well, nothing else came. And I was on my way back to the city I was living. I was living in Memphis at that time, and I was on my way back, and I saw this billboard that said, Jesus cares for you. And I slowed down, and I said, I don't care if Jesus cares for me. I want my daddy to care for me. I did. I tried everything that I could. I tried every trick that I could, every accomplishment, every accolade that I could. I tried to gain it so that I could sweep some of that pain and disappointment and the shame and the blame under it. Wouldn't have to look at it. I made the honors roll. High school football player of the week. Football scholarship. I'm still looking back now, because I'm still looking for that thing from him. Just a word. I'm working with IBM now. And finally I got to the place where I said, you know what? Nothing's going to work. It's done. Let me go on about my business and let him have his life as he will. Well, I had my run with corporate America. Or they had their run with me. It was one or the other. I got fired from my second job. Started singing at these jazz clubs on the weekends. One of my friends comes up to me and he says, those songs you sing are great. I said, yeah, they're songs my grandmother taught me. He said, when you sing, the room changes. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's just from the place that you sing from. I said, yeah, my grandmother had this raspy, out-of-tune alto voice, but she was surely convicted. I said, well, you know what? I've decided I'm going to move to New York. I want to be on Broadway. He said, that's a good idea for you. Got my one-way ticket, moved to New York. Went to the corner of 87th Street in Columbus, and I stretched my arms out and I said, whoo, I'm home. And in the back of my mind was, and I'm far away from him. All of that. First gig, Jesus Christ Superstar, national tour with Ted Neely and Carl Anderson, the original Jesus and Judas. We're on the tour, and we just played Casper, Wyoming, and we're headed to Long Beach, California. We got a long ride ahead of us, and I take a nap, a couple of hours, and I decided to get up and start talking to the bus driver, and we're talking, and all of a sudden this thing whizzes by the bus. I take a look at it, and I say, "What was that?" And the bus driver says, "I think it was a tumbleweed. Pretty sure it was." I said, "Catch up to it." Never seen a tumbleweed in person, only in the movies. So we continued our conversation, and out of the right periphery, I see this thing coming at the bus. So I turn and try and make eye contact with it, and all of a sudden it just fades. I said, "Well, that's odd." Continue the conversation, and out of my right periphery again, here it comes. And so this time I make a quick look, and it doesn't fade this time. And there it is, the face of my Father. And then it fades. A couple of hours later, we land in this diner, get some breakfast, and there's a couple standing in front of me with a small child, and one of the parents asks the child, "What would you like for breakfast?" And the child begins to speak, and I'm sitting there listening to the child, and all I can hear coming out of the child's mouth was my Father's voice. So I rush to the restroom, and I have this tirade, just a total spin out, and I say, "Why are you following me? I thought I left you. Stop it. Stop tormenting me. Go back. Go back." Well, that didn't leave me. It followed me all the way to Long Beach and then all the way back to New York City where I was living. And I stepped into my room. I was living in Harlem at the time, and I sat on my bed and I heard this voice say, "Call him. Call him now." I picked up the phone, called. My mother answered the phone, and I said, "Mommy, is Daddy there? I need to talk to him real quick." She said, "Yeah, he's right here." My father answers the phone, and my father had a really dry voice. "Hello." And all of that courage that I had gotten up just to call him disappeared. You know, I thought about the man that had sired me, man. I thought about that guy who I looked up to. I loved him, I loved him, I loved him. I couldn't deny it, but I didn't want anything to do with him. And I started this rampage, this list of things. Do you remember when? Do you remember when you said this? Do you remember when you did this? Do you remember when you didn't do that? How embarrassed I was. And my father just calmly said, "Well, you're not going to like what I have to say, but I don't remember a thing that you just said. You got me mixed up with somebody else." I said, "Oh, I do." Well, in that moment, I heard the voice again say, "Say it. Say it." And I said, "Daddy, I forgive you." Silence. Well, I became angered. You don't have anything to say? So I started going down the other laundry list. And in the midst of that tirade, I heard the voice again say, "Tell him. Tell him what you really think about him. Tell him what you've always thought about him." And I took a deep breath and I said, "Daddy, I love you. I always have, and I always will." Silence. I hung up the phone, and I cried myself to sleep. And I remember when I woke up, it was like a party going on. "Congratulations, Charles. listening to this, and I said, congratulations for what? You did it! You told him. You told him just what you thought about him. I said, yeah, but he didn't respond. It's okay. It wasn't for him. It was for you. You freed yourself. You released it. I said, well, why am I not celebrating like, like I should be? I said, keep that covenant. Keep the covenant. The covenant's yours. And so from January 1997 to 2009, I kept the covenant. Every time I'd see my father, every time I'd hear him on the phone, I'd say, Mom, put Daddy on the phone. If just for a minute, I'd find the courage. Oh, hey, Daddy, I just thought I'd give you a call and say hello. I love you very much. Mm-hmm. But I didn't stop. I had to say it because it's what I really felt. In 2009, I went home to Nashville. By this time, my father was on dialysis. He'd just come from a treatment, a session. Up at 4 o'clock in the morning, they'd come and pick him up. He'd be back by 11. And he was shuffling into the kitchen. My mother had his breakfast waiting for him, and he turned around and sat down, exhausted. Put his head down. My mother placed his plate right there, and he pops his head up, and he looks at me, and he said, "Oh, there's my baby. Daddy loves you." I was a little confused, so I asked, "Are you talking to me or are you talking to Mama?" He said, "I'm talking to you." I'd done that work from 2007 to 2009, but at that moment, at that present moment, I had straddled that fence once again. And in that moment, I thought to myself, where in the world was that? When I was 3 and 4 and 5 years old, when I was trying to touch you, when I just wanted you to touch me. Tell me that you love me. Say I'm proud of you. Put your hand on my head, Daddy. And then I remembered there was that other voice that reminded me, what about the covenant? He's ready now. Are you? And I loved him so much. I said, yeah, I'm ready. I had no idea how it was going to turn out, but I said yes. Years unfolded. You know, my father had so much inside of him that he wanted to share, and I would just sit there and listen to him. World War II stories. And in November of 2012, Thanksgiving, my mother comes rushing to my room and she says, "Go in there and see about your dad." I said, "Well, okay." And he's in there, and I walk in. He has an empty box of Kleenex and the Kleenex in this hand. And he's on the side of the bed, and he's shaking like a leaf, crying, just crying, crying. And I said, "Daddy, what's wrong?" He said, "I want to see my mama. I'm ready to see my mama." I didn't know what to do. So the word to me was just stand. Stand there and be the strength that he's been for you in your life. All of these things came to me that I could not understand at that time, but I knew something was happening. In February of 2013, my father transitioned, and I was there the last 5 days, right there. First 2 days, he was coherent. Not very talkative, but coherent. The last 3 days, he wasn't. And so it's those last 3 days that we began to communicate in this other realm. And all I could hear was, I know I didn't say it like you wanted me to or like you expected me to, and I didn't do things that you had wanted me to, or perhaps things that I should have done. But son, I want you to know I loved you and I did my best. He went on and on and on, and he finally said, and I'm getting ready to move on, but I'll be flying with you wherever you go from now on. Me and you, look for me. I'll be somewhere. Feel me, if you will. Yes? And in that period of time, the entire life with my father was encapsulated. And I said, what if? What if? What if? What if this was all in divine order? What if he came to teach me to dive further into the self-discovery? What if he came to teach me how to tell myself, I'm proud of you, man. Did a good job. And to teach me how to love myself. Not what I do, not what I've done, not what I have, but to love me. What if? And so I said, thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you, great, 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 and great. Because I know you're all here. And I'm here to break that cycle. Gotta break it. Release it. So at the end of the day, the only thing that I could do was just surrender and let it go. And I go home now and I sleep in my dad's room. That red hat that he always wore is still sitting up there. And I still ask the question, I wonder why my daddy never took me to church with him and held my hand and walking along the way. I still have questions, y'all. But I've come to break the cycle. And the last thing that my father told me, he said, the pain, the disappointment, all of that resentment that you had for me, the shame, the blame that you felt, he said, you're not alone. So my charge to you, son, is to go out and teach others how to navigate that thing. I had to do it too. I had to do it too. My father never told me anything close to I love you. And that's when it became real to me. That this journey is just full of so many surprises. But at the end of the day, bless the teachers and just surrender to it all, because we have work to do. Y'all, we have work to do. I'm so glad I had this time with you today. Men, I bless you for being a blessing in my life. My life will never, ever be the same. And I go forth because I got work to do, y'all, and we do too. Together, yes? Yes. Peace and blessings. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Inspiring. And we get to continue this beautiful time of inspiration with the sacred gift of giving. We are so very blessed by all that we have and all that God gives us. And so if you will, join me in the offering affirmation. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.